Resuming debate, the honour for Calgary-Midnapore.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. C'est toujours...
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here in the House of Commons in order to share my ideas with regards to Bill C-35.
Madam Speaker, I want to start today by talking about the greatest pride and joy in my life. And as much as I like being here and as proud as I am to represent the people of Calgary-Midnapore, it's not that. It's my son, Edward. He's just the best guy ever. I'll never forget when my husband brought him around the green curtain after I delivered him and showed him to me. And I know at that moment I made the decision that I would do whatever I could to give him the best life possible. And he's a great guy. Now in addition to doing well at school, he also plays piano, begrudgingly. And in addition to that, he's a great hockey player. Go Wolverines. He's a good little center forward. And as well, he's a Cub Scout where he learns all sorts of amazing life skills. So he's a good little guy. And as much as I love this place, he is my one pride and joy. And I know my wonderful husband, James, feels the same way. And I know that every mother out there listening to this, every parent, but every mother feels the same way about their son or daughter or sons or daughters. There's just nothing you wouldn't do for those little people. And you want them to have the best life possible. And you want them to get the best care possible. I know that when we started out, we had to put Edward on a waiting list when he was very, very young. But we were very fortunate. We got a space at a good facility near us. But that's the reality in this day and age, is that parents have to put their children on a waiting list. So certainly, while this bill, which actually is unnecessary to bring to this House, given the agreements between the provinces, but nonetheless is still here, it's a little unfortunate because even though I'm talking here today and I'm talking to you, this program might not be for you. Are you like me? Perhaps you're like me. Perhaps you have a full-time job. You have a husband or a partner who has a full-time job. You have two parents working or two caregivers working. You got to get your child into some care before you get into your work for the day, before the day starts. And so you need something that starts early. And you know what? You can't always pick them up right at 3 o'clock or even 4 o'clock or some days even 5 o'clock. You need the flexible hours, even after you go through all the effort of packing them with their blankie and a snack. Maybe the hours just aren't flexible enough for you with this type of program. Maybe you're like me. You are a parent with another partner who is doing your best in this world with two full-time jobs. And you know, there are holidays where sometimes the facility is closed and you got to figure out care for that. So maybe you're like me. Maybe you're in a situation with two parents working. And in that case, you know what? Unfortunately, this program isn't for you. Are you like my friend Chris? My friend Chris is a flight attendant. She doesn't know what her schedule is going to be. Sometimes she doesn't know when she's going to get called in. She might be called in for a 3-4 day shift back and forth across the country, maybe some exciting destination. You know, maybe she has to start really early in the morning. Maybe she gets in at some weird night at night. She has a very flexible schedule that changes all the time. And there are thousands of parents like Chris across this country. Are you like Chris? Because if you're like Chris, this program is not for you. Are you like Armine? Armine runs a day home in her house. She has 5 children herself, so there's always lots of kids that the children who are there can play with. She loves staying at home, and she always has the delicious smell of whatever she is cooking in her kitchen. Her home is a warm, inviting place, but her day home doesn't qualify necessarily for the national program. So you know what? If you are like Armine trying to run a day home out of your house, this program is not for you. Are you like my mother-in-law, Anita? You were so happy to become a granny or a nana or an oma or a dandy. You knew you wanted to be an important part of your grandchild's life when they were born. And the best part of your day is when your child, your grandchild, is dropped off. You're just so excited to see them, and they are so excited to see you. And you know what? You gave up your part-time work. Maybe you gave up your volunteer work, but that's okay, because that's what you were willing to do as a grandparent. That grandchild in your life was important enough for you, and your life is complete and worthwhile as a result of taking care of that grandchild. But guess what, unfortunately? This program is not for you. Are you like my friend Misty? You're a single mother. Your ex is in the trucking business. He's up at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. driving all night, and then back to bed for another day to do it all again. Your two kids are at different schools, and you've got a full-time job with some flexibility, but it's still a lot to manage between two schedules of the parents, and you're constantly trying to communicate with that other parent, figuring out who can get what child when. Oh, of course, your two children are in extracurricular activities as well, and you know what? You're just adjusting to life on your own, in addition to adjusting to your children's schedules, as well as the schedule of your ex-partner. So you know what? Perhaps this program is not for you. Are you like Shelley? Shelley is new to a community. She moved there not long ago. Her husband got transferred from his job previously. So it's a new place for her. Her family isn't there. You know, when her daughter was born, she put her name on a waiting list, but that was in her former community. In her new community, Shelley doesn't have a space. Shelley just doesn't have a space in the new community. She's put her name on the waiting list now for the national program, but in the interim, she's trying to cobble away some type of care for her daughter who is 3 years old now. Spaces are filled up, so she's on the waiting list once again. So are you Shelley? Because if you're Shelley, guess what? This program is not for you. Are you a child care owner-operator like Crystal, trying to meet the needs of your community? But you can't find enough staff to meet the demand of children that are coming in. The nutritious food you serve that might only be the only good meal that the child gets the one day is no longer covered by the government's allocation as a result of inflation and of prices going up. And the profit framework means that some centers have some families paying a certain amount and other families paying up to 4 times more. That's the reality of a situation. And you might even have to shut down your operation because your costs go beyond what is considered reasonable by this government. So maybe you are like Crystal. You're an owner-operator that is just trying to run your business, and as a result of the rigidity of this government's daycare program, you are not able to not only not have a business as a woman, but not provide a much-needed service to your community. And you know what? In the case that you are Crystal, guess what? This program is not for you. So my name is Stephanie Kusie. I'm the Member of Parliament for Calgary-Midnapore, and I'm a mom, but this program is not for me. Is your name Chris, or Anita, or Misty, or Shelley, or Crystal? Guess what? This program is not for you. This government can call it whatever it wants, $10 a day childcare or universal childcare, but that claim is a lie because this program is not for you.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member across the way for sharing her experiences. I, too, as a
Don't remember calling out male voices, anybody with a male voice. I did give the floor to the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, and she has a female voice. And so I would ask others to please hold on to their thoughts until I recognize them, should they decide to try to be recognized. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know we're all very excited to talk about childcare in this House. I'd like to thank the member across the way for her comments. And I, too, as a single mom, arrived here with my then 2-year-old daughter to have to wait for a spot. And it's a story that's universal for many, many families in this country, which is exactly why we signed agreements with every province and territory in this country over the past year to ensure that we build more spaces. So the member raised a lot about flexibility for shift workers, and I'd like to share with the member and with this House, I'm going to read directly from the text of the agreement of the Government of Alberta with the Government of Canada, that an additional grant for those operating flexible and overnight childcare will also be provided under the operational grant. These spaces are necessary for those in various industries for frontline shift workers. Has the member read the agreement? And perhaps if she'd like some briefings on it, we'd be more than happy to share them.
Honourable Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Thanks very much, Madam Speaker. Clearly, the member doesn't know, actually, that I was the campaign co-chair for the former Minister of Children in Alberta during the time that she negotiated this agreement. So, if she wants to talk really big about what's in the agreement, I actually was communicating with the then Minister of Children at the time on a pretty regular basis, and I think I have the inside track there to what's going on, and I think the line that I was left with was money didn't want to be left on the table. What that says to me, actually, Madam Speaker, is that many of these provinces felt pushed into these agreements. They felt they were left with a lack of flexibility, no other options. Figure out who knows who first, maybe of all, and who's talking to who, and then after that we can talk about the finalities of the agreement, which again, no, I don't think anyone was excited about it. Everyone felt pushed into it and forced into it. At least
More questions, questions et commentaires. L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Drummond. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for her speech. She raised a number of cases of people, parents, mothers, families that are not eligible for having a space in a childcare center. The idea of sending a check to everyone and saying just deal with it with the check, that won't make more childcare spaces, whether Quebec or elsewhere, in order to better fund the services that we have now, or rather funding the services we have now adequately. That's the solution in order to better help our children get a good education in childcare centers, and it will also create more spaces. There is an area where we agree. While Bill C-35 has many good intentions, we believe that it goes too far into provincial and Quebec jurisdiction. Does my colleague not think that it would be better to send the money to the provinces in Quebec so that they can deal with this topic themselves?
Calgary-Midnapore.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. I don't think about this topic that much. Because ultimately, as someone who comes from Alberta, what Ottawa does with the money which we send is not our problem at the moment. I hope in the future things will change. But he also spoke about the number of childcare spaces. That is a problem, and I think with this program we're actually going to have more problems with space. Because we know that more and more parents will need spaces and there won't be enough workers. So there's a problem, firstly, with the money and how it's distributed, but also with the number of spaces. Thank you.
Time for a brief question. The Honourable Member Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to my honourable colleague from Calgary-Midnapore, vis-a-vis the exchange that she just had with the Parliamentary Secretary, I'd like some clarity. Will she agree with me that this bill does not tie down childcare to any particular hours? Everything is to be negotiated province by province, and regardless of the status of what she may have for insider knowledge of the Alberta agreement, it will be up to the Alberta government, just as it is the Ontario government, negotiating with the federal government to ensure early childhood education is available to as many parents as possible right across the country.
The honourable member for Calgary-Mindapore, a brief response.
Yeah, I don't know. There's lots on television and in movies about power struggles where someone gives someone money and the person who gives the money to the person, like the person who receives the money usually has to do whatever the person who's giving the money says or whatever. So I think that would qualify here as well. So, it's just, it's not as simple as that. It's nice to think that it would be like that, but it's not. It's not as simple as that. Someone is giving the money has strings. That's the way it is with this government. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.